DJ Burns was actually a 4-star commitment to Tennessee in 2018. He kind of rode the bench for Tennessee that year when they were loaded with, that was the Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield year. He was kind of seen as the future of that. He very quickly hit the transfer portal a year later, went to Winthrop, and then has since transferred to NC State. Now has NC State in the Final Four. Everybody's excited about the NC State Purdue matchup because even though Purdue is the 1 seed, NC State's the 11 seed, DJ Burns' width is the type of width you want when you're guarding a Zach Edey, because that's your best way to not allow all those offensive rebounds that happen in the game. Because as you know, Dave, Tennessee did not have, they had tall players, they had athletic players. They didn't have anybody that was just wide. They didn't have any girth, really. So the question is going to become, would the girth of DJ Burns have helped Tennessee beat Purdue last week? Would they be in the Final Four if they had him?
Yes, they would. Yeah. Yeah, there's
You're
no
convinced?
Yeah, assuming that he wasn't a complete jerk, and if he stayed around Tennessee for what's that, 3 years, then he would have overcome his jerkiness that he apparently had when he showed up, because that's why Rick Barnes didn't want him. And if Rick Barnes didn't want you, aren't you going to take the side of Rick Barnes more time than not, Caleb?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, I will.
Yeah, so I would take the side of Rick Barnes, and I think Rick Barnes would eventually turn him into a solid player. I think that weight was told to me as it was a little bit of an issue. I think that Rick Barnes would have turned him into a solid player, and he'd be on a Final Four team. It just wouldn't be the same team that he's on now.
It'd be a better team.
Probably be a better team. I'm not so sure, though. I like Edey a little bit more than you do. I'm not so sure that he would have beaten Edey, but Tennessee's chances would have been vastly, vastly improved. They needed one guy to go out there and, muscle the guy up and be able to win some of those leverage battles, because you don't win. I'm not making excuses. The officials had a terrible game, but you don't win those battles if you're losing leverage all the time. And they just never had a leverage, Caleb.
Never. That was a huge problem. And think about the irony of that with DJ Burns not wanting to wait. He didn't get to emerge until this year anyway. So don't you think he looks back and it's like, man, I could have emerged like this at Tennessee and I'd have Dalton Connect playing next to me and we'd be a 1 seed favored to win the national title right now. Instead, yes, they're in the Final Four, but I mean, they're not winning the national title. I can tell you that over the next 2 games.
Don't you feel like, though, there are some players who just show up and they're like, I don't want any part of this Burns stuff. This practice is hard right up and through March. Don't you feel like there are some guys that they should know it, even if it's just through an official visit, but they've got to know it pretty early. This is not a great fit for me.
Possibly, but that's I mean, look, that's, if your goal is the NBA, that's really short-sighted. Because the NBA
it's an indictment of their character, which then would probably keep someone from saying this practice is too hard for me, because they have poor character, and the character would also be cocky and tell them, I can handle this.
Yeah, exactly. Let's also be fair here to this. Dave, we just talked 18 and 19-year-olds. This is the problem. I guess this is the joy for coaches in college athletics, but the problem too, the character of an 18-year-old is not always the same as the character of a 22, of what they are at 22. They can grow up and be mature and really, how many people did you cover at Tennessee football over the years that they were just annoying, obnoxious head cases when they got on campus, and then 2 years later they were one of the best people to cover? There are probably a lot of people you covered like that, weren't there?
Yeah, a lot of people would change. A lot of people would change the other direction too.
Well, yeah, some people get good and then they think they're too big. They're too good for the program. I totally agree. So maybe DJ Burns has grown up and is thinking about this totally differently. There's also this factor, because, Rick Barnes made Admiral Schofield trim so much weight when he got to Tennessee. Do you think it's possible that Rick Barnes would not allow DJ Burns to be as wide as he is right now and was demanding that he trim up, and which would hurt his leverage that Tennessee would need him to have against Edey?
Yes. You can still have good leverage, though. It's what you do with your feet and the way you move your body. I mean, you can still have good leverage without having the weight. So, yeah, what that happy medium would have been, I don't know. I don't know if he would have been a stretch guy that would have played on the perimeter and tried to take it to the rack. I don't think so. I think he's more of a post player. I know what they've got at Rick Terry Jewelry Design, and they want to be your jeweler. If you're looking for affordable game day jewelry, how about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. We certainly appreciate them. As Caleb, I think that Tennessee would have benefited from one more big guy in there. I still, not to beat a dead horse, but I don't know with Adu what happened there. It seemed like he was talked out of that game before it even started.
It's exactly what it seems like. I think Adu, I've told you guys this for a while. I think Adu's just soft. I think when you, and this is a problem again for big men, particularly as that you go deeper in the tournament. When you punk a guy, you can be soft and finesse on the perimeter. It's not the 80s in basketball. You're allowed to be soft and finesse and not able to handle certain things. Klay Thompson is one of the softest players in history, and he's been great in the NBA for years. But under the basket, you get punked, you got to be able to fight back. I have no inside reporting on this, Dave. Not like I did on actually Blake Griffin back in the day, but I have none on Jonas Adu, but I've watched enough. It's very clear that when you cheap shot him or punk him under the basket, he wants no part of it. He backs off. He doesn't want to fight back. And guys, that is a huge problem for big men because they can be a human highlight reel like Blake Griffin, but they'll never be a champion because getting punked like that totally holds you back.
SEC football said, I think Euros Plastic would have put it to 80.
He'd have fouled out by 5 minutes in, though.
Yeah, but I think you're kind of okay with that because it would have been hard fouls. I think he would have done as good or better than Burns.
I don't think he would have done better than Burns. Okay. But mainly because of the offensive side. You realize how bad Plastic's issue was every time he got a rebound on offense, he'd bring the ball down and then lose it. Okay, so that was a big problem with Plastic. I know I'm like get tougher, but then I don't like players like Plastic that make so many mistakes on the court, but then all they do is be tough, I guess. But it costs our team in so many other ways. Plastic is like, oh, this is a great comparison for you, Dave. You know who Plastic is? Do you remember some of those games when Julian Battle played at Tennessee where Julian Battle would get cooked on the field, but then he'd get like 3 personal foul penalties in a row at the same time? I think he did that in the Peach Bowl one year. And
don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, Julian Battle had a bad habit of
defensive back for Tennessee. Yes.
Yeah, defensive back for Tennessee. There was one game, I think it was that Peach Bowl loss to Maryland, where Julian Battle got cooked down the sideline consistently. And then when he didn't get cooked, he got a 15-yard penalty every time. And so it was like just get him out of there. And now Julian Battle was maybe just trying to rally up his team because nobody wanted to be in that game. But still, that was Plastic. Plastic would play like garbage, but he'll still get you some technicals. So it's like, well, wait a minute here. That's problematic the other way.
No, but I would take some good physical Plastic fouls. Those are a little harder than those Estrella. I'm just trying to lean against you and do the best I possibly can.
I thought Estrella played superb defense against Edey. So Estrella actually, if anything, Estrella just laid the book on why Edey isn't going to be that successful in the NBA.
Yeah, but I'm way past defense. I'm like dirty play, break a forearm. That's you and I are in two different places. I'm like the guy's punked you the whole game. It's time to break his.
But Edey didn't punk him though. That's the thing. Estrella actually legitimately.
I know, but he's punked your team. He's punked your team.
But Tennessee got back in the game because of Estrella's defense. The only reason he couldn't close the deal is because they made some offensive mistakes down the stretch. But they got back into the game because Estrella knew that if you force Edey to use his left hand, he's got problems. And he consistently did that. And I think that's a big indictment of Edey. But yeah, you wouldn't have to be like smart like that with Burns. Burns could just like out muscle Edey. Because I don't know how you feel, Dave. Edey, this is unfair to say because no one's tested him on it. He strikes me as soft though. But am I just saying that because he's so tall, he looks lanky?
Ooh, I think he's the opposite.
You think he's yeah.
To me, this sounds like I'm stereotyping, but he's Drago from Rocky 3 or 4. He's Drago. I mean, I think he's super tough and I think he's going to be able to bully people around. At some point, he's going to get punched in the nose. How does he react?
Okay.
That's the question. I mean, is he going to be able to react? And I don't even mean physically punched in the nose. I mean, somebody just lays down a quick 15 on him, is like cramming it on him. He's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, whether it's cheap shot or physical or not, somebody's going to challenge him at some point in this tournament. And that's the tournament.
This is where you need.
Yeah, that's it.
You know who, if Jonas Adu got his mind right, you know who he'd have the potential to be, but he won't get his mind right, so he can't be?
Don't tell me yet, because I want to remind people the show is represented by Banks and Jones. Then you'll tell me. That's a tease, kids. Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right. Who does he remind you of, Edey?
No, not Edey. Jonas Adu. If Jonas Adu could have punked Edey. Okay. Here's who he should take lessons from. Rasheed Wallace.
That's not a bad comparison.
If he got tougher, he could be a Rasheed Wallace.
You know, the other thing that I thought was always frustrating about going against Rasheed is that he could slip out there on the baseline and hit that jumper. So you have to play like legit defense against him, which isn't fun. And then he comes down and he's throwing those skinny little elbows. He's got those skinny type elbows that you used to hate playing against. That's a pretty good comparison. I was wondering which direction you were going to go there.